First of all, thank you for inviting us here. Hello, everybody. We're glad to be part of this. My name is Schoenegger. I'm actually Austrian, but I have a company together with two partners based in Switzerland, and we are a bag brand, and we called Question. And we founded our company in 2008, and our goal was to make bags that have materials that are coming from nature in a world full of plastics. This is where we started. Throughout the years, we have worked with different natural fibers from cotton to linen to bamboo, and discovered the banana fiber in 2015 being maybe the strongest natural fiber in a plant-based fiber. And we kind of thought this is a good base to maybe develop something new. We developed a yarn out of it, which we used to make a fabric that is now used for our bags. This is an example of it. And because we are only a very small brand, we also decided to open this up with other companies and give access to the innovation. Ever since, now we have been working with fashion brands and automotive and footwear, and we already see quite a lot of Bananatex products in the market, and we hope there will be much more coming soon.
Thank you so much for this introduction, and maybe I can already ask you a little question about innovation. So can you tell me what does innovation mean to you and your company?
I think for us it was really questioning the norms and how things were done. We started, that's the reason for our brand name, and we tried to find answers, how products can be designed, how materials can be developed, the way we work, consume, produce. And I think whenever you rethink existing processes or things, then this is innovation, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. But it was not the intention to be a scientific innovator. It was just our thought that there might be better ways than making a plastic backpack and selling as many of them as possible.
Right. I think that's a great learning story already. And John, maybe you can tell more about you and your position and your company, your product.
Hi everyone, I'm John, co-founder and COO of Blueland. Blueland launched in 2019 on the market, and we launched and were founded with a mission to eliminate the need for single-use plastic packaging in everyday products, starting with household cleaning and personal care products. To do this, we spent a lot of time rethinking and reinventing the formats that cleaning products and personal care products come in, and ultimately reinvented a whole portfolio of products to be in what are often never seen before formats in this category. So dry, effervescent tablets, we have some powders as well, and putting them in these new formats enabled us to package our products in paper, compostable paper-based packaging, as opposed to plastic as these products traditionally come. And we founded in 2019, so relatively new, but what's really great about that is that we were able to incorporate cradle to cradle and the cradle to cradle philosophy really from the very beginning. It's been very core to everything we've done at Blueland, and very proudly, all of our products are certified through the full Cradle to Cradle program. I think as of this month, nothing lower than gold. So we're very proud of that, and really proud to work with you guys so much.
Thanks. Yeah, we take a deeper dive in that a little bit later on. And Roxane, can you tell a bit more about you and your company?
Sure. So as you mentioned, Tarkett is a flooring manufacturer. We've been around for 140 years. We really started as an innovative company. The owner started out making parquet flooring because he wanted to do something with the wood scraps and not have that go to waste. So that energy and that thought has always been there. We manufacture flooring from hardwood floors, resilient carpet, all the way through. And we've been working with Cradle to Cradle for about 20 years, and has really helped us look at things very holistically and set us on a great path to evaluate and optimize what we're doing. So for us, it's been a very exciting journey.
Thank you so much. And can you tell a bit more about your innovation pathway? What does it mean to you when you consider products or processes or your business model? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
I would say it's pretty much our business model, and being able to follow the cradle to cradle guidelines and principles. we're not just looking at the certification, but it really helps set the standard of how we operate, how we look at manufacturing, changing those processes to reduce water, to reduce emissions, getting away from fossil fuel. All of that wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have had to start it down on this journey with Cradle to Cradle. And then it affects our product. When we first started out, one of the first things that we were asked to optimize were our phthalates. And so we removed orthophthalates and worked with the supply chain to find a bio-based plasticizer. That wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have started with Cradle to Cradle. And to me, that optimization is what helps us innovate. And then also what happens to our products. We have products installed for 5 years that are perfectly good, for 30 years that need to be recycled. So all of that comes into play. And then as we work with our supply chain, that social equity piece comes into play. And for us, looking just basic thing as orthophthalates, why should someone have to make a decision to purchase a product based on price and not have a healthy material? Removing the orthophthalates from every product then made healthy selections available to everyone. And I think Cradle to Cradle helps guide that journey.
And for you, John, it sounds like your business model is set up to be an innovative business model because can you explain us a bit more, how does it work, your whole business model? But do you take back all the packaging or with a refill, and how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So it is primarily a refill system. So the best example would be our hand soap. So the way that our hand soap product works, you buy a Forever glass bottle from us once, and we sell you a tablet. All of the chemistry that you would need to make a hand soap is in the form of a tablet, a dry effervescent tablet about the size of a quarter. So while you buy the hand soap bottle from us once, after that you're just refilling your hand soap by simply filling up with tap water at home, getting our refill hand soap, dropping it into the hand soap bottle, and voila, it immediately starts to effervesce, and you have 9 ounces of hand soap within a minute or so. The same can be said across spray cleaners, etc. And we've done the same in products like laundry and dish and body wash. So we really focus on, I guess we have two parts of the refill system: the Forever vessels, which allow customers to have that experience that they're accustomed to spraying a traditional spray bottle or using a traditional hand soap, but the refill piece, the consumption piece, is what we really also reinvented in order to move away from the single-use plastic packaging and put it in the paper packaging. Because most of those products that you buy in the store, the tap water that we're asking you to fill up with at home, you're really just buying that water in the store, and it's all that water, sometimes 95% of the formulation, that's leading to the big bulky plastic packaging, which has a lot of implications for waste, but also has a lot of implications for carbon emissions as you think about shipping all of that stuff around the country and around the world.
Do you also get feedback from your consumers, like, this is what we're searching for, this is what we need?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a really strong direct-to-consumer business. We are also in retail, like Costco and Target and all of that, which is great. But the direct-to-consumer business definitely gives us a really strong feedback loop. And I think what's been, from our vantage point, really fantastic is just to see how much, even in a 5-year period of time, that momentum has really picked up. We talk about, my co-founder and I talk about, when we first started, a lot of our consumer messaging was about teaching people about the problem, talking about plastic waste, how prolific of an issue it is. We're eating a credit card's worth of plastic a week, etc. I feel like we spent our first couple of years with that message, and it has really shifted to customers know that, and it's starting to become more and more table stakes with, we get that, what is your solution that also helps me not compromise on the things I care about, like effectiveness, affordability, and price. Yeah. But the customer really changing has been like the most exciting part about the whole journey.
Yeah. Sure. So it sounds like there's still a lot of education still needed for our markets to understand the problem first and then come up with the solution immediately.
But from our viewpoint, people are really getting it more and more and more, and that's what's been really great. As a consumer products
that's super important to create drivers also and incentives for consumers and other customers. Hannes, it's obvious that your product is innovative. It's made of banana leaves, if I'm right. But how about your business model? Do you also have like an innovative business model around it? Are you thinking about taking products back or?
To be honest, we're not that far yet. In many cases, we are working on product development with some brands. Some of the products are on the market already with some luxury or what H&M has, for example, shoes, and Stella McCartney has just released a bag with our material, but we're not at a point yet where we have solved the take back and recycle issue. In a way, we are in the natural cycle side. We have developed this out of a fiber that specific banana fiber only grows in a permaculture environment, so it's agroforestry, no chemicals, no fertilizer, not even water is needed. So we take this as a base and we could just bring it back into soil and it will disappear in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of what we propose to our partners so far. But also I think there could be an option to make new yarns out of that.
Yeah.
But we didn't prove that yet.
No. That's very interesting. And what do you think about, you have this new business model, product as a service. Do you see yourself in the future kind of owning products instead of selling it to customers?
I think that depends a lot on the industry and then the application. With Question, we have tried something like that, giving bags for rent. And what we've learned after like 12, 18 months of testing such a model was for bags, people really prefer to own because of maybe this is an item that is very close to their everyday perception that it's part of your inner
emotionally
life. Yeah?
attached to the product or so.
Yes, I think this is a very interesting area, and there might be a lot of products in the future that should be rented, including cars and all of those different directions that we should go. Yes,
And
bags maybe.
Yeah. And Roxane, for your product, is that something you could consider? Products as a service?
That's a great question. The built environment is trying very quickly to catch up with reuse and reduce and recycling. That's really where the innovation and process needs to happen. We're starting with a design firm writing a specification that becomes a contract with a contractor. If at the beginning that's not in that contract, it's very hard to make it happen after the fact. So getting that carpet or resilient flooring back at the end of use or end of life of that building is critical for us. One, we can use it as raw materials, and two, it shouldn't be going into a landfill. If it's something we produced 25 years ago, we have the responsibility to take that back. It shouldn't be going into a landfill or being reused. But it's that disconnect between all of these parts of pieces for the built environment that we really need to connect better. We've looked at being able to reuse carpet, leasing it. But it's not the standard business model. So how do we change that standard business model so leasing a carpet for 5 years works, can be cleaned, and then be reused again by someone else? So I think those are changes that are still happening in the built environment. And it can't just be Tarkett that's doing it. We need, as an industry, the flooring industry, to keep moving that forward. So I think it's coming, but we're not quite there. We're able, we recycled over 1 million pounds so far this year, but it's just a drop in the bucket of what we need to be able to do.
And what's the biggest driver for your company to innovate? Is it customers? Is it in the DNA?
Say both. We always tell our customers, especially designers, you have a strong buying power. Like what you want, you can get, because you have that, what you're purchasing, all these different products within a building. You have a right to ask for what you want. So, and they do now start asking and saying to us, like, we need certain material. We want something that we can have and know that once it's installed, it can go back to you and be recycled or be reused. So we're getting those requests. But the other side of it is we're still a family-owned business, and still that innovation is still there. What can we do next? And what's going to be our mark in the industry? What can we change so that we're impactful in a positive way? So I think that DNA has to be there, but it also has to be one where innovation can start from the top or the bottom. Because if you have people who are working in our facilities and see something that could be corrected or done better, they know that. They're the ones who see it every day, and we need to take their input and their vision for that innovation as well.
Yeah. Is there a team on it, a specific team on innovation or circularity?
There's a specific team for innovation, and then we have a director of circularity. So we have, because it's all kind of almost two different sections of what's next, and then how do we manage what's now and what's coming.
John, when we talk about our standard, how does it drive innovation and circularity for your products? How does it help you looking at all the 5 categories?
We really start with the framework when we're taking on any project, which could be bringing a new product to market or optimizing a product or updating our supply chain. And I think, there's the one side, which is the chemistry products. So as we're formulating and creating these products, we really do always start with Cradle to Cradle and making sure that our innovation team is tasked with making sure from a material health perspective, we're always striving for platinum and achieving platinum. So that's a place to start. As you can imagine, that is a lot of work to be able to do that while still maintaining the typical margin requirements and efficacy requirements and price requirements. So it sounds simple starting there, but of course that's a huge undertaking. But even when it comes to our supply chain and supply chain partners, we have developed our working with your certifying partners, like a lot of vetting materials that really tick all the boxes in the Cradle to Cradle framework, so that when we are going out with any RFP, when we're even engaging in the initial stages of conversation with any supplier, we're making sure from the very beginning that we're aligned from the Cradle to Cradle perspective. And I think that works really well for us in a couple of ways. The first is that we're not wasting time. As we're developing these relationships, we know really from the start that this is a relationship we can invest in from the point of view of our mission. But number 2, that has also really helped us partner with folks who have in their own right improved their sustainability profile, because we came into this relationship having these goals very, very clear with them. And we've seen them say, okay, you guys are growing a lot. We want to really invest in this relationship. So, for example, our largest manufacturer converted to completely renewable energy with on-site solar, and examples like that across the entire supply chain. And I think just having started the relationship with prioritizing Cradle to Cradle has helped us build that kind of a supply chain.
Hannes, for you, why did you choose for Cradle to Cradle Certified? Because I know in textiles we have so many options to go for GRS or GOTS, or there's so many certifications out there. Why did you choose for Cradle to Cradle Certified?
In the beginning, we didn't really choose to go for any certification because we were involved in the whole process, from the farmer to the yarn to everything, to the end product. And for us, the whole supply chain made a lot of sense. We knew the impact, people behind it. But once we started sharing the material with others, major brands, they would come to us and say, like, can you prove that? Is it really having this small ecological footprint that you claim? And then we were thinking, okay, well, yeah, then we need someone to certify that. And then we started looking into this world of certifications, and as you say, it's almost as polluted as our world. And there are labels that are really, you do 1% less bad and you get a nice stamp on your homepage, and that's of course not what we wanted. So because we believe our innovation has an impact on the social level as well as, of course, on the material side, it was quite obvious that Cradle to Cradle is the right direction to go. I'm glad we did it that way because we learned along the way about our own process, about the details of dyeing and the impact of that. It was definitely something beneficial to our work.
Yeah. So it helped you also to optimize your product in the end and to understand all the processes better.
Exactly, and it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, you're still learning.
Yeah, it's a journey, and I think it's important to learn every step along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I like so much of our standard. It's not one moment in time. It's really like a process approach. And Roxane, can you tell a bit more also on this subject? Like if you look at the 5 impact categories, is there one like favorite that really drive change for your products? Or
most of what we like about Cradle to Cradle is the holistic approach, and that there are 5 pillars to it. And I think at different times when we first started out, raw materials was a big driver for us because we were looking at and analyzing raw materials and optimizing. So that was a big focus. And then we've moved into, I think, really pushing the social equity part and being able to push that through our supply chain. So I think at different times in our journey, different ones have been more important than others, but overall that holistic approach is what we take. And that's really what we've tried to emphasize as the building blocks of our organization, the building blocks of our product. And without those 5, I don't think you can really continue to build, because if we're not looking at raw materials, but only looking at our impact on air, it's still not creating a good product. So it has to be all 5 pillars, and we have to be driving those at all times. And granted, sometimes on that journey, we do better at one than we do others. And then we have to keep moving along and say, okay, now we need to improve on this one. For Tarkett, we're a large company, so maybe we can't always do everything we want at one time, but we can't lose sight of what cradle to cradle means. We can't lose sight of what those 5 pillars are. So sometimes we have to back up a little bit and say, wait a minute, is this part of the principles of who we are? Maybe this isn't the pathway we take because it doesn't fit into cradle to cradle's vision or the principles. So we try to use that as a guideline, try to talk about that as the certification for us, because the same as in textiles, the building industry has several different, all the different certifications you can, but they're always looking at one point in time or one particular item, and we really believe you have to look at all 5.
I like that answer very much. I tried to push you in the corner, but it didn't succeed, and I think it's the best answer, because that's so important to take all the 5 categories into account. And you even used it for more than just taking the standard, but also for your organization to look at the pillars as building blocks for creating products and creating your sustainability.
We're a large company. Our impact is large as well. And if that impact is not good, by looking at those 5 pillars, that's a very negative thing too. So we have to be accountable for what we're doing too.
Yeah. Maybe a little deep dive in the social part, because that's especially with version 4, it gets more attention, right? It was first more like a checklist almost, in short, but now it's integrating the whole due diligence process, really taking risk into account and creating policies based on risks. Did you already looked at version 4, or are you already working with version 4, Westan?
We've looked at version 4 and we're working on version 4, and it has prompted us some changes internally. So we have a large procurement department, and with that, what we're looking at, we tell designers, you have large buying power, but we also have large buying power. So we're rewriting guidelines for our procurement team of, these are the questions you need to ask. This is what the supplier needs to fill out. This is the new contract we'll have with our supply chain. So it's driving that change all the way through.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're pushing some of our suppliers. And in the past, we've had to part ways with suppliers because they didn't want to align with that. And we just have to say, no, this is our path, and can you align or can't you? But it's really forced us to create a whole new process internally. So that's cradle to cradle drives that innovation, product, and process. And I think they always go hand in hand. Yeah. For us, it's procurement and looking at reevaluating our facilities and that continual improvement. The other part of cradle to cradle is that you're never done. It's continuous, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that you have to recognize that and not feel like, all right, we did great here, we can stop. It's continuous. Yeah. And that's okay. It needs to be a journey because things change.
Right. Yeah, and we're also changing and trying to innovate with our standard. That's why we have our version 4 into place. We're even looking at making small changes to it to make it more adaptable and more innovative, but still possible for companies to adapt it, to implement it. So it's always a struggle. It's the innovation part you have in your company, but we also have it as Cradle Certified. We try to make it as the best standards possible, but still you need to implement it. It must be possible to implement it.
You mentioned the social equity part, and in the built environment, that's becoming very key. So those questions are starting to be asked. So version 4 is flowing along with that demand.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah, and we have all this legislation coming up, and we need to look at that as well. And we want to help companies also to create the right information that you can use also to comply to upcoming legislation, like the CSRD reporting, for example. So we don't want you to do double work. So we're always open to all what's happening in the outside world. John, if we look into the future, near term and long term, what do you think is super important for Blueland, but maybe also for your sector or even broader for our market?
Blueland, in the short and long term, a really big focus of ours is not just the obvious plastics that customers see and perceive as a problematic plastic, but also the hidden plastics. And there are a lot in our industry. And we're very focused on exposing that with the right scientific research, et cetera, to really push the market forward, again, while also keeping the customer at the center in terms of what is the most important characteristics for them in their product around efficacy, price, and convenience. And I think the best example of that would be, we've been doing a lot of work over the years, and we're really putting, increasing resources around it. So in laundry and in dish, which are the huge categories within cleaning, the format that is single dose, like a laundry pod or a dish pod, has been rapidly growing. It's the fastest part of the category. In this country, we use over 20 billion of these pods a year. And most folks don't realize that that film around that pod is actually plastic. It's a petroleum-based synthetic plastic. And when we put it into our laundry machines and into our dish machines, while some parts of it might dissolve to the naked eye, it doesn't ultimately go away. We actually worked with a university and anti-plastic nonprofits to really truly understand what happens to that plastic when you put it in your laundry and dish machine. And I mean, really shockingly and terrifyingly, it turns out that over 70% of that petroleum synthetic-based plastic ends up back into our environment. And when it's in our environment, it behaves just like any other petroleum-based plastic. So with Blueland, what we've spent the last number of years on, and ultimately feel like could be the most important thing we ever do, is understanding what happens to that plastic and then coming up with a product that still has that convenience of single dose laundry and dish and that effectiveness that everybody loves, but moves away from that plastic pod. And we've done that. We've launched that in laundry and dish, and we're trying to get more and more traction there. And it's a combination of trying to move the market through customer education, trying to work with government, like the EPA, to better regulate the product, and then, get it on retail shelves so that it's very accessible to folks. But from our mission perspective, we look at that as one of the most important things we could do, because it's such a massive part of the industry, and it's one specific case where we are just like putting plastic into the environment rather than it accidentally ending up in the environment.
Super important. We also saw at the presentation of Michael, like how much textile and tires and all of that create microplastics in our oceans. And maybe I didn't saw the cosmetic packaging or household product packaging, but maybe it's related to some of the categories. I didn't see them all. Did you see it coming back?
I saw the personal care one, and I wondered if it was similar.
It? Yeah?
Personal care, yeah.
Oh.
And personal care has the same problem. I mean, lots of folks probably remember when there were plastic microbeads in body washes and things like that. It's inspirational and pretty remarkable how quickly we were able to get those out of products once like grassroots momentum started paying attention to it. And we're hoping to follow a similar path around these other hidden plastics.
And Hannes, your product is not made of plastic, so you wouldn't cause any more plastic pollution. But what do you see in the future happening? Is it banana ticks, or are there new exciting innovations going on?
So I think for us, we're in the textile area, which was the biggest elephant in the presentation. I think what we are committed to do is develop it further for different applications. We have learned there's a lot of different standards between furniture or footwear or fashion and all of that. So there's a lot of work to do until we can scale it up, but we're committed to scale it up in a way that has an impact. Without rolling it out, the impact is not really there. And at the same time, there's of course limits to that, because at some point you start competing with land, or you need chemicals or whatever is needed to increase efficiency. That's what we want to avoid. So what we are focusing a lot at the moment are reforestation programs that can be carried out in tropical countries. We work with the Philippines at the moment. And the plant, our banana plant, needs shade, so it needs higher trees, it needs different crops in such an environment. And unfortunately, there are like 50, 60 in the Philippines, 80% of all rainforest and ancient forests are destroyed. So what we want to do is to roll the supply out with those programs, and that will give us quite a lot of material to work with. There's a lot to do, until we reach that point. But can we replace cotton? Of course, no. And we also cannot replace synthetic materials, but we can make a contribution. And I'm sure there will be quite a lot of new materials coming up in the next years who might also replace a few percent of this and that.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I think renewables are super important in our industry and will gain more importance. And Roxane, what is your vision? And maybe we can also bring it already to some nice takeaways for the audience, but maybe you can combine it with your future vision as well.
So the future vision, we're based in the built environment, which is a complicated business. There's a lot of layers to it. A lot of times somebody wants new because there's a new product or new look out there. As a built environment, we're putting 40% of the waste that goes to landfill is accounted for construction industry. So how do we change that? And part of that is, revisualizing what is a great design, what is a great building. You look around New York, we have a lot of great old structures. Why are we tearing them down? Can they be rehabbed? What's the cost of that? Can we find new methods of construction that don't make rehab as difficult? But also then our flooring or ceiling tiles are installed and 10 years later somebody comes in to remodel. They don't know whose ceiling tile it is. They don't know whose flooring product is. So what happens to it? It's easier to throw it in a landfill. So we need an innovative process for that. We need a way to track that so that it's easy for the customer. If we don't make it easy for the designer, easy for the flooring contractor, easy for the general contractor, all of that's not going to happen. So we really have to me, it's innovation and process that needs to happen, but then innovation in our products as well. Low VOC is already happening, and that's growing from paint, ceiling tiles to flooring. The flooring industry has been pretty good at looking at their raw materials, and it's a very competitive market. So once one kind of does it, then the others want to come along. And I think it can't just be Tarkett who does XYZ, it's got to be the industry. So we want to lead, but we also want everyone to follow. And I think various companies can be very innovative and we need to learn from each other. It has to be more collaborative. It shouldn't be a competition of who builds the healthiest building. It should be a collaboration that we're all working towards that same goal. So that would be what I would love to see as a vision, and to see buildings that can reduce the carbon, that aren't just generating more. And we talk about using less materials and how can we do that better. But my takeaway would be that it's a great journey that I feel like built industry has started down, has made great progress. We continue, learn from each other. Let's share that information. Let's figure it out together, because ceiling tile might be doing something that could be really innovative for flooring. We just need more of that collaboration, I think.
Collaboration is the key word. Yeah, and for you, John, what do you think? What do you want to give to the audience as food for thought?
Blueland, we really took what I think is a pretty drastic approach. We took a category that is so ubiquitous in one format for that category that everybody knows and is so used to, and the drastic approach was looking at it and saying, if we keep with these traditional formats, we won't be making a dent on the plastic pollution problem, the emissions generated from this industry. So we completely reformatted them into the dry effervescent tablets. That required us to truly rebuild the traditional supply chain for these products from scratch. And in doing that, I think one of the things that has really excited me and made me think, Blueland really could be that business case to all much larger businesses about the economic argument around sustainability, is that in rebuilding our supply chain to truly prioritize planet and people, we also took a lot of costs and economic waste out of the system. You can picture it, if you think about shipping around 60,000 Windex bottles, that takes many big semi-trucks. When we put it into a tablet the size of a nickel, you could probably put that on one. And the cost implications of that on top of all of the sustainability implications is really remarkable. And we see that, in our margin structure and what we've been able to pass on the consumer. So I think takeaway has just been be willing to take the drastic approach. And when you really are willing to start from scratch in terms of what the supply chain looks like, I think you'll find that there's just been a lot of waste built up in the system that can be stripped out and rebuilt when you're thinking about planet and people first.
Yeah, I like this combination of an economic incentive and a sustainability incentive. I think George would like this thing to talk to CFOs and also give the financial incentives. That's what we need in companies, so that's helpful. And you, Hannes, what's your key takeaway for the audience?
I really want to emphasize on the cooperation point you made earlier, because especially in our case, it's really a lot about the cooperation, and we strongly believe that that's the better way. I think mankind has proved that cooperation works better than competition. We just forgot for some time. Let's go back.
Yeah.
Continue that.
And not looking for competition, but more partnerships.
Right.
Yeah. I think this is great to end this panel with for now, but I want to open up to the audience. So if you have any questions, I would love you to ask them to one of the panelists.
This is specifically for John. The idea of refillable cleaners, household cleaners, is not new. This keeps going around back, and I'm old enough to remember in the early 90s when some of the large, and both small and some of the large CPGs were putting out these, small ones for Windex, including, the little 1 ounce liquid that you pour in and fill it with water. So I'm curious what's different now, specifically what kinds of messaging you're doing for consumers, because I love that you're selling at Costco, but if you go to Costco, and I do, it seems like half the shopping carts are filled with pallets or not pallets, but just flats of water, in bottled water. And so it's not the taking home bottled water in plastic. So what's working that may be different, and what have you learned about how do you talk to consumers?
We were practical in launching Blueland, and we focused, we knew what our mission was, but we really focused on what are the most important things for consumers in this category. Our belief has always been that it is not on the consumer to make this switch, it's on businesses and government, but in our case, business, to make these things a no-brainer. So we really focused on the consumer insights, including around, liquid concentrates that had existed in the past, and the things that didn't work. And ultimately, like price, convenience, and efficacy were the major things. So I think on the one hand, some of our products, like, for example, those that are in Costco, it is a no-brainer switch. I mean, we are taking a traditional, the single-dose laundry, the single-dose dish, and from a customer use perspective, there is no difference whatsoever. The sustainability characteristics are much, much better, but they don't have to think about the plastic, which people might have a response to the plastic for very different reasons, but that one's a no switch, no brainer kind of thing. With the tablets versus some of the liquid concentrates, it's pretty simple. I mean, customers, when we did a lot of the insights and analytics, they saw that those were just messy, inelegant solutions. No one wants to have to pour or get out like a little funnel to make it work. But I think there's another really big thing that we have seen very recently, which is customers are not myopic. I think some of these big companies do put out like a plastic tube concentrate of liquid and message less plastic or whatever, and customers, they can see that, they understand what's recycled, or more and more understand, especially customers who gravitate towards these kind of products, like what's recyclable and what's not. And I think the view that customers are myopic, you can put something smaller on the shelf and that'll check the box for them, is wrong, and it's a lot of what these businesses have gotten wrong. One example for me was with a company that I have a lot of respect for, that I feel like paved the way for a company like Blueland in the space, which is Method. They came out with, they had their concentrated liquids in a bag, which is less recyclable than if it was just stayed in an HDPE bottle. And their customers called them out, and they said this, you're better off in the HDPE bottle than you are in this bag. They called them out at places like Target, and Method did the right thing. They took away the bag and they stuck with what is truly the more sustainable option in this particular case. But I like the example because it shows that customers are paying attention and they understand the difference between, putting plastic in a small tube that has no chance of getting recycled versus having something sit in paper, which folks, more and more understand has a better likelihood of actually being reused.
Hi there. I work in the construction sector. I think probably everyone in this room will know that their clients are prioritising carbon Absolutely. First and foremost, we're quite lucky in that the UK and Europe are really pushing for circularity as well. And I think material health has always been quite a high priority. Where I get quite disappointed is in the lack of attention for human rights and social fairness, which I don't think we've really discussed this morning. And also almost no interest in water and the tracking of water throughout the supply chain process. Do you see a similar ranking in your sectors? And also, do you also find that the capital expenditure within your business in terms of investment for improvement is also ranked in the same way?
We are starting to see, for the built environment here in North America, there is more question now about your supply chain and social equity in that supply chain. But I would say that's only been probably in the last year that we've really started seeing those questions. There's a couple of very large design firms that have now changed their standards for product specification, and one of them has included that social equity piece, which is the first that we've actually seen that amplified in any way. So I think it's been slowly coming around, but water over probably the last 2 to 3 years has become more of a topic because we see the water shortages too often happening in the western part of the country. You know, that it's a huge issue there. We, for Tarkett, we've implemented many changes and tracking our water use and the reduction of that. A few years ago, we did changed our processes, and it was something like a 75% reduction in water. But it's really, I think sometimes we forget that we have to measure first and know where you are, and then set the guidelines of how you reduce from that. And I think sometimes we get in such a hurry to say that we're doing the right things, but are we really doing the right things if we haven't measured them first? And I think in the built environment, that's one thing that is missing sometimes, is we set these standards when the building is built, but 5 years from now, is that building still performing the way you said you wanted it to perform when you started? And I think for us, that's a little bit of a miss. I agree, carbons is a big interest right now. Water needs to be more of a key interest in how we operate businesses as well as how we're building. And then reducing that waste that happens during construction as well as when you're renovating too.
Agree. Emissions are something that customers are pretty aware of. And you know, our darker green to lighter green customers, folks who are already shopping for sustainable products, really do hold us to account on all elements of the, you know, all 5 of the cradle to cradle criteria. We're also a certified B Corp, which has a lot of rigorous social fairness elements to it. But I think as we start to get away from the dark green and the lighter green to the more mass consumer, what we see is still a big focus on personal health, how these products affect someone's health. But what has been really interesting, I think, in the last 5 years since we started Blueland, is more and more people understanding it's not just like what I'm putting into my body, but what I'm bringing into my home. And that's given us an opportunity to talk a lot more, not just about the plastic piece, but the individual ingredients, the paints, the dyes, you know, everything that goes into it, and help people understand that it, you know, it's not just plastic, it's the entire system, and what you're bringing into your home matters. And I do think, you know, health, putting yourself at the center, continues to be a really compelling argument for a lot of consumers, but helping them to understand that it's just, yeah, it's the ingredients too, not just the things that are going into your body, has been a good positive shift, I think.
And Hannes, maybe we can end with your answer, because yeah, we've only 2 minutes.
I think in the textile industry, so it's already well known that there are huge amounts of social issues. When you look at organic cotton farming and all those different things, when you look at the water management, we know that dyeing is in the textile industry is like a huge water problem. And yeah, this is what we do is kind of an answer to that, or our way to work in that direction. We work with smallholder farmers. We know them. We know the impact of this specific work to their lives. Try to work with closed loops in the water management when we process from fiber to yarn and we dye it. It's definitely something that needs a lot of attention and explanation as well, because consumers do not always understand the impacts, and of course they cannot. So there must be regulations and policies in place much more than now in the future to make really an impact.
Thank you so much, all of you, for all your answers. I think we learned a lot. Big applause for these three panelists.